Hi, and welcome to this course on FrameMaker 2017. I'm David Rivers. We'll begin by exploring what FrameMaker is and how it's being used by technical writers before launching the program and getting comfortable with the FrameMaker user interface. We'll spend a great deal of time learning ways to format your documents and customize the layout to suit your needs. We'll spend time learning how the use of color and graphics can add visual interest. We'll work with tables to organize information, and we'll delve into the use of referencing with the use of footnotes and cross-references. We'll also learn about how you can generate books with FrameMaker and make use of indexing, conditional text, and hyperlinking. By the end, you should have all the tools you need to start using FrameMaker to generate complex documents with ease. There's lots to cover, so let's get started. If you have access to the exercise files, you'll be able to follow along with me step by step as we move through the chapters and movies in this course. So if you do plan on using them, I highly recommend placing them in a convenient location such as right here on the desktop. Double-click the exercise files folder and you'll see a number of subfolders representing each of the chapters in this course. And double-click one of those folders to reveal subfolders representing each of the movies in that chapter. This way you can follow along with me from the beginning of a chapter as we build our project or jump around from movie to movie. Double-clicking a subfolder here reveals the file we'll be working with in that movie. Now, if you don't have access to the exercise files, not to worry. You can still learn lots by trying to follow along with your own files or by simply sitting back, relaxing, and watching. Just before we dive headfirst into this course, here are some things you need to know about FrameMaker and this course if you're going to follow along with me. Firstly, I'll be working with the 2017 release of FrameMaker. Adobe always numbered their versions of FrameMaker up until version 12. After that, they started naming FrameMaker releases by year. FrameMaker 2015 release came after version 12, and this version, FrameMaker 2017 release, has come after 2015. Now, as this course is designed for beginners or those new to FrameMaker, you'll probably be able to follow along if you're still working with an older version of the program like FrameMaker 12 or the last FrameMaker 2015 release. Now, FrameMaker is a powerful program, so you're going to need some power to run it. Here's what you need in the way of system requirements to install FrameMaker and follow along with me in this course. Firstly, you'll need an Intel Pentium 4 processor or faster. You'll also need Microsoft Windows 10, 8.1, or as far back as 7. You'll need at least a gigabyte of random access memory or RAM. 2 gigabytes, though, is recommended by Adobe. You'll also need 3 gigabytes of available hard disk space for installation. You may need some additional free space as well during the installation because you cannot install on a volume that uses case-sensitive file systems or on removable flash storage devices. Just keep that in mind. You'll also need JRE8 or Java Runtime Environment 8 installed. And this software does not operate without activation. So to activate and register, you're going to need an internet connection. A broadband internet connection is recommended. Now, FrameMaker allows for the creation of unstructured and structured documents. We'll be focusing on the creation of unstructured documents in this course to keep things simple. Now, if you're looking to learn more about creating more advanced structured documents using XML and data attributes, put your request in now for a more advanced course on FrameMaker using these capabilities. We're always listening. I'll explain more about unstructured versus structured documents in the next movie. Just before we get into exploring the powerful features and functions of FrameMaker, it's important that we understand exactly what FrameMaker is, who's using it, and what are they using it for. So in this movie, we'll cover all of that as well as the difference between structured and the standard unstructured application. So exactly what is FrameMaker? Well, in a nutshell, Adobe FrameMaker is a complete authoring and publishing solution for technical communicators. It's part of the Adobe Technical Communication Suite, and FrameMaker is an excellent tool for ensuring the efficient and consistent creation of technical documents. And that's because it's template-based, and it's an authoring and publishing solution for structured, unstructured, and XML data content. But what do we mean by structured and unstructured content? And what's the difference? Well, if you've ever used a word processor like Microsoft Word to create letters, memos, newsletters, and so on, then you've created unstructured documents. All that means is that you are the one responsible for maintaining the structure of the document, like how it was laid out and formatted and published. There were no rules and standards imposed upon you during the creation of that content. Structured documents, on the other hand, are different. They have a hierarchical order and meaningful relationships. A structured document will include something called metadata, meaning information about the file itself. And that, not the user, determines how it's organized, how it looks, and how it's published. This is separate from the content itself, which means the content can easily be reused in other structured applications with different metadata. So here's a basic example. Let's just say you're creating a sales catalog of merchandise. And in this catalog, you want it to be available in print as well as online. And you also want people to be able to access it on their mobile devices. Instead of having to create separate documents or copies of the exact same content, you can reuse the same content but just filter it through different structured tags to create the look and feel for the different formats. And this is a typical scenario for FrameMaker where the content can be created once and then presented using 3 different methods. The most common format for structured content is XML. It stands for Extensible Markup Language. XML ensures that content is assembled properly, and formatting tags are applied to the style content based on the designer specifications. XML is important because it defines relationships between content. It provides a hierarchy to content, enforcing a specific order. And XML makes your content portable and accessible because it's a standard that can be read by many different hardware and software platforms. Also, XML allows your content to be published to many different channels since the XML tags can be automatically transformed into formatting tags. Now, we could easily dedicate an entire course to structured content in XML, and in fact, we have several XML courses available if you're interested in learning about the language. But the important point here is that we can use FrameMaker to author structured content using XML. So who exactly uses this powerful software? Mainly, technical communicators will use FrameMaker to write, edit, and publish content for print or online use. Also, word processor users will often switch over to FrameMaker when they need to generate more complex and lengthy technical documentation because FrameMaker offers a more structured yet flexible authoring environment. And you'll also find commercial and specialty publishers making use of FrameMaker's template-driven publishing model to create books, industrial catalogs, directories, and other lengthy and complex content. So now that you have a basic understanding of what FrameMaker is and what it can do, it's time to actually start using it. Well, it's time now to get comfortable with Adobe FrameMaker. We're going to spend a little time touring the user interface, getting you comfortable in your new surroundings. It's going to help as we move through the various chapters and movies in this course. When you launch FrameMaker, the first thing you see is this start screen, and it's broken down into 3 main sections. You can see on the left-hand side, recent items. Over time, as you begin to create files or connect to repositories, you'll be able to go back to them quickly by finding them on the list here on the left-hand side. With a brand new installation, we don't see anything to choose from yet. Down below is a Browse button to find a repository you might want to connect to. The middle section is the largest. This is where we go to create new documents. 2 different categories here as well. XML documents, like topics, tasks, concepts, etc. Or if you want to create a FrameMaker type document, you can see a portrait, landscape, or custom layout can be chosen from here. You'll be starting with a new blank document in one of these layouts, but you can start new projects and books from here, even access templates as well. The right-hand side is dedicated to providing additional resources. Access webinars from here. This is a scrolling area at the top where you can go to the links to choose things like the YouTube channel and white papers, for example. There's something called the TechCom Central by Adobe, where you can gain access to tons of information and updates gathered from years of use and experience. There's the Partner Portal. Notice they each have their own links at the bottom. And then down below is where you can access additional learning. Learn about new features in this version. Access the user guide from here. Want to know more about XML and data? There it is. Tutorials, training, Developer Center, and you can check for product updates here as well. All right, let's start a brand new FrameMaker document in portrait mode. That's the first tile under the FrameMaker category here. We'll give it a click, and that takes us to a blank sheet of paper waiting for our input. Very similar if you've used word processors like Microsoft Word, for example. You have an empty page and a flashing cursor waiting for you to start typing. Let's take a quick tour now of the user interface you see here, also known as your workspace. Workspaces can be set up for different purposes. They can be customized and saved. Across the top is the menu bar, the standard menu bar, beginning with File, Edit, Insert, all the way across to Help. And of course, clicking any of these headings displays the menu with related commands. Clicking File gives us file-related commands all the way down to Exit when we're ready to leave FrameMaker. Let's just click in the background here to close that up. You'll also see toolbars. The toolbars you see are based on the workspace you're working with. These are just shortcuts. So instead of going to File, New, you can create new documents from here. You'll also see keyboard shortcuts popping up like Control-N for New. There's the Save icon, Control-S, for example. Now these are all customizable. We can move these toolbars around, and we can change them as well. Just below, you're going to see a tab. When you're working on multiple files, you'll see multiple tabs, and you click the tab to switch between them. By default, with a new blank document, you can see it's untitled 1, and the extension is .fm. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see an area where we might access additional tools. These are called pods. There's a little arrow where we can expand the pods area to see the different tabs. And this is where we can get access to specific commands. For example, working on a table catalog, you can see some formatting options, object style catalog, etc. And we can click the same double arrow in the top corner to collapse that if you want to focus on your document. Let's leave it open though for now. Up at the top, you can see this magnifying glass icon for searching for commands. But over to the right of that, there's something called authoring. And that's because we're using the default workspace. The layout you see with the menu bar at the top, the different toolbars and pods, is based on you authoring a document using the authoring workspace. Click the drop down. You'll see some other preset workspaces to choose from, like a blank one. Choose blank, and all of a sudden, you've just lost all your pods and toolbars. Click that drop down to go back to authoring, and you'll see many of the tools and pods that would be required when authoring a document. Let's click the drop down one more time. Maybe you're working on graphics. You want to manage your graphics. Selecting that is going to give you different options. Notice the toolbar down the left for working with graphics. And when we click the drop down, notice that we can go to some other presets, but we can also customize these. That means when we manage a workspace, we can save it as a custom workspace and have all of the tools, pods, etc. we need at our fingertips that we're most used to working with. At any time, you can reset the workspace. That's because, as I mentioned, these are totally customizable and movable. For example, if I go up here under Manage Graphics and I want to pull this pod out, I can click and drag it. You can grab a tab and drag it. So you can totally set up your workspace the way you want. But at any time, you can also go up here, click the drop down, and reset it back to its default. You'll need to confirm that by clicking OK. Let's go back up to Manage Graphics here and switch it back to Authoring. That's the one we're going to be working with as we move forward. Down at the bottom, the last piece of information in your user interface or workspace is the status bar. Not much showing up here right now because we don't have any content, but you can see some navigation arrows for moving through the pages in a document, and you'll always know what page you're on, in this case, page 1 of 1. Well, now that we're feeling more comfortable in our surroundings, you should know that you have the ability to fully customize your surroundings. You can move pods, toolbars, float them, collapse them, get them into position so they're exactly where you like to have them when you're working on your project. Even save that layout so you can refer back to it when needed. That's what we're going to do in this movie with the new blank document we started in the previous movie. If you're jumping to this one, just go up to File, down to New, and choose Document. We're working on a new blank portrait document. And as we go up to the top in the right-hand side and look at the button displaying authoring, that's the current workspace. We talked about workspaces in the previous movie. Clicking the drop-down allows us to go to other presets. For example, if we're going to be working a lot with graphics at some stage in our project, we can go to Manage Graphics, and you can see how the workspace changes. We have tools over here on the left-hand side, a new toolbar. We have a new set of tools showing up under the standard toolbar as well. And over here on the right-hand side, we see our pods. Notice they have tabs, and when we select tabs, that pod comes to the front. When we go up to the Window menu, click Window, and go down to Pods, you'll notice exactly what is on top. In this case, Object Properties. Notice there are a number of other pods that we're not seeing, like hotspots, for example. There's the tab, but it's not on top, so that's why it's not selected. And we can switch to it from here by simply selecting it. Let's go back to Insets, for example. Over here on the right-hand side, we see some others, and you'll notice the double arrows that allow us to expand our pods, and you might see them stacked, like I do. And of course, we can fully customize what we see here as well. If you want this group on top of this group, just simply move it. Go to any one of the tabs. So let's say the Insets pod. I want to move that up. Notice when I get up to the top, a blue line appears. That indicates I'm about to switch places. And releasing moves that up to the top, and you can see my others down below. Now, if you wanted to make a couple of pods into one, you can do that as well. Maybe the inset should be part of the object style catalog here. So when I go to Insets and click and drag down, I can see a blue line go around the entire pod as opposed to in between pods like I see down below. That's to change the order and slip it in between, but when I see the blue highlighting all the way around the outside, I can release and combine those so it becomes part of the group. Now I see Insets as part of the group with Object Style and Undo History. Now keep in mind you can always go back. If you made a mistake, click the drop down up here in the top right corner and reset the workspace. When you click OK, everything goes back to the way it was when we started. But you can also create your own workspaces. Maybe when you're working with graphics, you're also doing a lot of text formatting and want to work with fonts. When you go up to the View menu, click that drop down, you're also going to see check marks next to different pods. So let's go to Pods and select Fonts, for example. Selecting Fonts opens that one up, and you can see it's added to the group with insets, hotspots, etc. Now if I want it maybe stacked down below, I can do that, just float it out. And we can expand our other pods and move that in if we wanted to. A lot of things you can do to customize your pods to work exactly the way you want them. Same thing goes for the toolbars, by the way. If you don't like having your tools here, the graphic tools on the left-hand side, you can go grab it and move it. Just drag it up into the other toolbars if you wanted to, or keep it floating if you like. Notice when we move over to our pods, we see that blue line as well, so we can kind of dock it next to our pods. A lot of people like to have them on the right, along with all of their other options here. And once you have your workspace exactly the way you like to work, you can create your own custom workspace from it. Let's go up to Manage Graphics, click the drop down, and save what we have here to our own workspace. Click Save Workspace and give it a name. Now you might want to call it Custom Graphics, like so. And you can leave spaces. It's not like naming files. Click OK, and if you need to rename it, you can always do that as well. Notice now at the top it says Custom Graphics. Click the drop down, and it appears on top of the other presets. So if you wanted to rename it, just go down to Manage Workspace, and from here, select it from the list. It should be the only one if you've been following along with me from the start. Click Rename to give it a new name. I'm going to type in DR. custom graphics. Maybe you share a computer with others and they like to have their own graphics layout. You can have several different custom graphic layouts. Using the initials will help you remember whose is whose. Click OK and click OK again. Notice you can also delete at any time any selected workspace. I'm going to keep mine. I like this layout. And of course, I can switch back to the original at any time, going back up to the top right corner and switching to one of the presets like Manage Graphics. Remember this look. That's where we left off. I'm going to go back up to the top now and switch to authoring. This is the most popular workspace when authoring documents, adding text, for example, things like that. Just keep in mind that if you don't like the way things are laid out, change it up, create your own custom workspace, and you'll always have the tools you need at hand when you need them. Another important part of the user interface or your workspace you should be aware of are the number of visual guides you can turn on or off to help you with aligning objects, sizing them, placing them on your page, and maintaining consistency throughout your document. The visual guides can appear by default, but there are a number of additional guides to help you that we're going to explore in this movie. We're going to do it with a file you'll find in your exercise files. Let's go to the Open button on the toolbar and navigate to the 0104 subfolder of your Chapter 1 folder of your exercise files. There's a file in there called MF Library Table. Notice the extension FM. It's a FrameMaker file. With it selected, we'll click Open, and right off the bat, you can see there are some visual aids. For example, the dotted line that goes around our text box containing our Chapter 3 title. You'll also see, as we scroll down, a dotted line going around the outside of the text box down below. And you can see how they're lined up perfectly on the right-hand side. They're also lined up perfectly with the line that goes in between them. These are all thanks to some visual guides. Now, one of the guides that I like to leave on, and that's currently not turned on, at least not for me, you may already see them, are the rulers. Rulers can appear across the top and down the left-hand side to help you with alignment, but also precision if things need to be placed exactly in the same spot, for example, throughout your document. So let's go up to the View menu. From here, you're going to see some check marks. We saw this earlier. For example, borders. That's what we're seeing around our text boxes, that dotted line. It doesn't print out. It's only there on the page while we're working on our file to help us. A little further down, condition indicators, you can see show text in structure view, etc. Well, one of the things I like to turn on, I mentioned, is the rulers. Give rulers a click and you'll see a ruler appear across the top horizontally, also down the left vertically. And this gives us an idea of where things are placed on our page and will help us be very precise with our measurements. Now the default scale you can see here is every 1/8 of 1 inch. That's the units also being used, but we can modify that as well. Let's go back to the View menu, and from here we'll go down to Options. Select Options, and you'll see the View options include settings for the units that are being displayed. There's inches. If you work in centimeters, for example, you might want to choose that. Notice the other options here as well. I'm going to leave mine at inches. When working with fonts, the default measurement is points. So you might have a 12-point font, for example, or a title may be 14 or 16 points. I'm going to leave that selected as points. You can see the other option is Q. Now down below, we see rulers are now checked off, turned on, and you can see it's set at 1/8 of an inch. That's because our display units are set to inches. So if you wanted to change that, you could be even more precise, 1/10 or 1/12 of an inch. Selecting these will change the ticks you see on the ruler, but it also helps when you're moving things around and snapping to spots on the ruler. We'll talk about that in a moment. Right now, I'm going to leave it at 1/8 of an inch. Grid lines are something that can be turned on, and they're very helpful when working with graphical objects, for example. Let's go to grid lines here and select it. With grid lines turned on, and by the way, you can turn them on from the View menu as well, you can also set the spacing between the grid lines that go horizontally and vertically, kind of like graph paper. So at set at 1/2 an inch, things will be snapped to that 1/2 inch mark. Let's click the Set button to see what that looks like. So as you can see, we have grid lines going vertically up and down, horizontally left and right, and we see them every 1/2 inch on the ruler. So moving things around, we would be snapping to those locations. If you need to be more precise, you can always go back to View, Options, and change that setting. Notice set to 1/2 inch. You could also go down to 1/4 inch if we wanted to, and click Set. So these are really going to help us when we start adding objects, including text boxes like we see here already. Aligning things using the snap to the grid, which is turned on by default, setting up our spacing, our units that we prefer, all of that from the View menu. Let's go back to View and turn grid lines off from here. Now you can see we're just back to the standard view with our rulers turned on, which I'm going to leave on. Let's go back to View for a second here because you may also want to see the hidden characters. These are the spaces, the tabs, the returns that appear in your text, for example, that you typically don't see and are invisible, but can be visible while you're working on it. You'll notice here that we can select it from the View menu. Text symbols, we'll turn them on where you'll see a tab after Chapter 3. You'll see that hard return or paragraph symbol after the word table. And then down below, you can see at the end of each line, there's a hard return happening there where it should be paragraph text that just simply flows. So this will help us to understand what's going on in our document. If we see some strange wrapping, for example, we could go in here and start taking these out just by clicking next to them and hitting the delete key on the keyboard. We may need to add a space after. I'm going to do it for each one in this line, hitting the delete key and adding a space. You can see how this changes the paragraph totally. If we were to go in and start adding content or removing content with all of these hard returns in there, that would really mess things up. And we wouldn't have an idea what's going on until we turn these characters on to get a good look. So I'm going to delete them all, except for the one at the end of the paragraph. I'm going to leave that as is. You can see that looks quite different. All right, I no longer need those, so I'm going to turn them back off by going to the View menu and selecting Text Symbols. So as you can see, there are a number of visual aids to help you when creating your documents and files. This is going to come in handy a little later on when we start working with graphics. We need things to be lined up or sized appropriately. And when we need precision, that grid is going to come in handy, especially snapping items to the grid and setting up our units and our spacing, all very important when creating documents and files here in FrameMaker. Well, now that we have a good handle on the FrameMaker interface, it's time to start creating documents and files. A great way to get a head start in the creation process is to use one of the many built-in templates here in FrameMaker, and that's what we're going to explore in this movie. You'll notice I've closed up any documents I was working on. If you were following along with me, creating a new blank document, or maybe you opened up this library table document in the previous movie, close them up and you'll return to the start screen. From here, you notice we can create new blank, portrait, landscape, custom documents, but we can also access templates. There are 3 different tiles to choose from here. If we go to New File from Template, you'll notice a list of subfolders representing the different categories of templates. So if I'm looking for a newsletter, I might guess business and double click there. No, nothing about a newsletter there. Envelopes, fax, letter, memo. So I'd have to go back using the up one level button here, and maybe it's under one of these other ones. I'm going to go all the way down to special here, double click, and sure enough, there's a newsletter. I select it, and all I know is that it's a newsletter. I don't really know what the features are. I don't have a feel for what it's going to look like when I start using it. So there is a better way. Let's click Cancel. From the start screen, if you go to one of these other options, Standard or Structured, we're going to go to Standard. It's going to open up a window with some previews and some features listed for the selected templates down the left-hand side. Notice the different categories: reference card, parts catalog, user guide, and the different parts of a user guide, for example. Click the down button, and you can see there are some business. There's those letter, memo, fax, and envelope templates. Reports, personal. Click down, and you'll finally come across special, and there's newsletter. Select it from here, and you get a nice little feature list telling you about the template. A nice little preview over here as well. So when you're ready to create the newsletter, you click Create knowing exactly what you're getting into. So with the newsletter open, you can see I'm ready to start changing up the placeholder text that appears here, like my company name, the title, and then the content down below in the columns laid out exactly the way the thumbnail presented it. Now, if you're working on a document, you don't have access to the start screen. You can create new documents by going to the toolbar, use the keyboard shortcut Control-N, same as going up to File and down to New. And if I want to create a new document, maybe I want to go back to that memo. Notice I'm back to the list of folders. I don't see a preview. Well, there is a way to get to it, and that's to go way down to the bottom of this dialog where you see Explore Standard Templates, and there's the structured ones. Clicking Explore Standard Templates takes us back to that preview screen, which means now we can go up if we wanted to. There's the memo. Select it, read about it, look it over. Looks great. Click Create, and you're creating another new document with a huge head start with all the placeholder text, the layout's done for you. All you need to do is change up the text. So it's a great way to get documents created quickly. But if you really want to customize your documents, set them up the way they need to be set up for your purposes, you'll want to create a custom document. And that's what we're going to get into in the next chapter. You can close up any files you're working on to return to the start screen. While FrameMaker templates can give you a nice head start in creating specific types of documents, you may want to create your own from scratch. That's what we're going to do in this chapter. Build a brand new document from scratch. That means creating a custom document. So from the start screen here, you can see we have a number of options for creating new documents. We do have some presets like portrait and landscape. Portrait is going to create a new blank document for you using the 8.5 by 11 or letter size paper with 1-inch margins all the way around. With landscape, you get the exact same thing turned on its side. But if you want to change any of those things, paper settings, margins, even text options, you'll go to custom, and that's where we're going in this movie. Let's give it a click. Now you'll notice the custom blank paper actually uses the US letter portrait presets. So everything we see here, 8.5 by 11, the 1-inch margins all the way around, single-sided. These are all part of the preset options when we select portrait, but we're going to make some changes here. Notice the page size set to US letter when we click this has a number of other options. If you want to go legal, for example, or tabloid, or if you're in Europe, maybe A4, for example. We're going to start with US letter, and we're going to keep it at 8.5 by 11. So that's set up, and we do want to keep it portrait as well. The margins, however, down below we can change. You'll notice that the numbers showing up have the inch marks, but we don't need to add those. We're just going to click inside, highlight what's there in the top field, and type in, how about 0.75? This is going to create a little extra space for us on the page. Now hit your Tab key, and it actually moves to the bottom field where we can type over what's there. We'll do the same for the bottom, 0.75, and Tab. Now you can see the settings are for left and right, and that's because single-sided is selected in the pagination category. If we go to double-sided, meaning we can now have facing pages like you'd see in a book with a crease down the middle, they change to inside and outside margins. So let's change those as well. On the inside, that would be right down the crease, we're going to type in 0.5. Hit your Tab key and choose the same for the outside, 0.5. There we go. We can even change the units of measure we're working with. Inches works well for us. And you can see we're set up to use one single column. Now, if we wanted to have multiple columns, this is where we go to change it. But with one single column, we're using the full width inside the margins we just set up here in the column margins group. We're ready now to create our custom document. Click Create. And you can see there it is with the dotted line going around the outside showing us exactly where our margins are. That doesn't print out. The cursor's flashing, waiting for us to start adding content. But just before we do that, we can also set up some text options. Doing it right at the beginning means we won't have to go back and format our document in different areas or select the whole thing to make major changes. So let's go up to the Format menu. We'll go down to Document, And as soon as we hover over document, we see a number of additional options showing up here for our text options. There it is. Give it a click, and you'll see some options that can be turned on and off, beginning with smart quotes. If you're going to be using quotation marks, it's nice to see them curved in the right direction at the beginning and the end. That's a smart quote, so we'll leave that checked off. The other thing I want to check off is smart spaces. This is going to prevent you from adding those double spaces after a period if that's what you're in the habit of doing. Perhaps you learned how to type on a typewriter. You were taught to always leave 2 spaces after a period, single spaces in between words. Well, smart spaces is going to make sure that the correct number of spaces always appear. All we have to do is click apply to apply that change. And now it's set up for our document. Of course, we need to save our changes. Even though it's a blank document, we have made some adjustments to margins, text options. So let's go up to the Save button. You can click it right here. Control S is your keyboard shortcut, or if you prefer, click File and choose Save from there. Now it's time to save this. We're going to save it to the desktop where it's easy to find. And all we have to do is type over what appears in the file name field. I'm going to type in Catalog 2017. There we go. When we click Save, it's going to be saved to the FrameMaker format by default. And now we have our first document well underway. All that's left now is to start adding content. Notice the name showing up here on the tab just above the horizontal ruler. Once you've created your new blank document, as we did in the previous movie with our custom settings, we're ready to start adding content. That could mean just simply typing away. The cursor's flashing up here in the top left corner. We're ready to go. But what if the content already exists? Perhaps you've been working on the content in another application, a word processor like Microsoft Word, for example, or even in a text editor like Notepad or WordPad. In that case, you don't want to retype the content. You just want to go get it. Copy and paste it. That's one option. There's another option here in FrameMaker as well that we're going to explore. I'm going to switch over to Windows Explorer. There's our catalog file. You may also see a lock file because we have it open. It's temporarily locked, so other people can't be working on it at the same time. But you'll also find this text file, Princess Dresser. If I double click this, it should open up in the default application here in Windows, which would be likely Notepad. Let's go ahead and do that. Sure enough, Notepad opens up and there's my content. Now, this is formatted, believe it or not, but because we've opened it up in Notepad, we're not seeing things like the hard returns, and we need to use the scroll bar to see almost 80 to 90% of the content that trails off the screen. So this is not ideal. It doesn't look very good. But I could copy all of this and paste it into my FrameMaker document. You could use the keyboard shortcut, Control-A to select everything, Control-C to copy, and then just paste it. That's one option. But let's close this up. And let's really see what it looks like by right-clicking this time instead of double-clicking. And let's go down to Open With and open it up with WordPad. WordPad allows for a little more formatting. You can see the blank lines, the returns. You can see some indenting is being used as well. Tab stops. So again, we could select all of this. Let's go ahead and use Control-A, the keyboard shortcut for selecting everything. And then let's use another keyboard shortcut, Control-C. That's short for going up here and clicking Copy. Now we'll just switch over to FrameMaker. I can see it in the background. You can use Alt-Tab or just click in the background. We're ready to paste. If we go up to the toolbar, you'll find the paste button there. Control-V is your keyboard shortcut. You can also go up to Edit, and from here you'll see Paste and Paste Special that allows you to choose some formatting. Let's just choose Paste and see what it looks like. There it is. It's pasted into our document. Actually continues on to a second page, and you can see the formatting comes along with it. We're ready to continue working on this. I could go in, double-click words to fix them up, change things. This document's ready for editing. But we're going to click Undo. You can also use Control-Z, the keyboard shortcut. And instead, from here in FrameMaker, we can go get the file and link to it. Sometimes that's more advantageous. Let's go up to File, go down to Import, and then select File from the pop-up menu. This allows us to go navigating to that 0202 subfolder, the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files, and select our Princess Dresser text file. Now down below, you can see we're not actually going to copy it into the document by default. We're going to import by reference, and that creates the link. Let's click import. Next, we'll get to choose the file type. It is a text file. That's already selected up at the top, but lots of different formats to choose from here. But it knows it's a text file. It's already selected. We'll click convert to convert it to what? Well, here we have some options before it's converted to our FrameMaker document. Merge lines into paragraphs, so blank lines are paragraph breaks. That makes sense. We could treat each line as a paragraph. Doesn't make as much sense because we do have paragraph text. It could be converted to a table. And then remember, a link is created, so when we make changes to it in WordPad, they should automatically be updated here in our FrameMaker document. With automatic selected, that will happen. Otherwise, we'll have to click an update button with manual selected. So let's just choose import with automatic selected to import the content, and you can see what it looks like. Very nice. So if I go in here now and try to make some changes, like maybe I want to change one of the words here. Instead of illustration, I want this to say figure. Let's double click illustration. Oh, the whole thing gets selected, and you can see we get a pop-up here for text inset properties. Okay, we'll close that. So we can't just go in here and start making changes. We'll click on the outside. It is linked, and until we unlink it, we have to make our changes in the native program. So we could go back to WordPad. This is the file we're working with. Come in here, and if we want to change illustration to figure, double click it here, type in figure, and then save this up. So we'll click the save button to save it up. There we go. So it's all saved. Let's switch back now to FrameMaker. Now we won't see that instantaneously. What we need to do is either close this up and save it or update it. So again, let's double click. That brings up the text inset properties. You can see the update is imported and it's updated automatically. Down below we have some buttons here for settings. You can see convert. We also have update. And clicking the update button, you can see it doesn't have an undo option. Click OK, and then close this up. Let's scroll up to the top now to see what our document looks like, and sure enough, figure appears there. If we didn't already have it open and it was saved up, the next time we open it, we would have seen this automatically updated. But because it's open and we're working on it, we need to go to the update button. Let's go back now to that same option by double-clicking. And from here, we're going to go to that second button, convert, and give it a click. Now we can convert selected text inset or all text insets if we've imported more than one document. But we've only brought one in. It is selected in the background, and converting it will convert it to text we can work with here in FrameMaker. So after the inset is converted to editable text, it cannot be updated. In other words, we can't go into WordPad, make changes, and expect to see them here. Won't happen. But if you want to work in FrameMaker, click Convert to convert it, and now click in the background and go back in. Now you can actually go in and start editing text. I want to change this back to illustration, double click, type in illustration. I can edit because we've converted it. So a couple of different ways to get existing content into your FrameMaker documents. Copying and pasting allows you to have editable text instantaneously. But by importing, you may wish to create that link, allowing one or more people to be updating contents in other documents that are updated automatically here in FrameMaker due to that link. When you no longer want the link, remember, you can always convert that inset to editable text here in FrameMaker. One nice feature of FrameMaker when creating text documents like we're doing is the ability to reserve space on your page for something called a side head. Side heads allow you to push your body text to the left or the right, reserving space on the page for things like titles, for headlines, subtitles, etc. In this movie, we're going to use our Catalog 2017 file we've been working with to create a side head area down the left-hand side of our page where we might want to put titles, for example. Next, to add the side head area, we'll go up to the Format menu, And from here, go down to Page Layout. Now from the pop-up menu, select right at the top, Column Layout. Notice Column Layout allows us to adjust the number of columns, which we're not going to do. We're going to keep it at one big column, but we are going to create some room for side heads. Notice the checkbox up here at the top. Clicking this checkbox allows us to adjust the width and the gap and the location of our side head. So notice we can choose the left, the right, or the side closer to the binding or furthest away from the binding if we're using facing pages, for example. Let's go with left-hand side, so it's always on the left. Next, let's adjust the width. We don't need a full 1.5 inches. Let's move it down to 1.25 by adding the 2. And the gap between the side head and the rest of our content can be adjusted as well. 1/4 inch is the default, but we can change that. Let's take out the 5, so it's 0.2 inches. There we go. We have a side head about to be created on the left side of our page with a gap of 0.2 inches and a width of 1.25. All we have to do now is click Update Entire Flow. Notice underneath it says there's no undo. In other words, if we don't like what we see, we can't go up here and click Undo. We can come back here and make adjustments, take out side heads if we wanted to, or adjust the width, the gap, or the location. You just can't simply use Control-Z or the Undo button if you don't like what you see with this feature. Let's click Update Entire Flow. Now notice it doesn't have undo support. We're going to see that again until we click this checkbox so it doesn't keep popping up going forward. If you like that warning, don't click this checkbox. Just click OK to continue. And there you go. We have our side head area down the left-hand side. And there's always going to be 0.2 inches between whatever we type over here and the rest of our content. That's a side head, and that's how you add it to your documents here in FrameMaker. When you create a side head area, as we did in the previous movie for our catalog document, you now have to tell FrameMaker what kinds of content belong in the side head area. By default, when we import content or copy and paste content to a FrameMaker document, it's considered body text. So everything we see here is body text, and by default, body text just goes into the column area. It's not in the side head area unless we tell it to be. So in this movie, we're going to use our catalog file to choose what goes into the side head area and format it. And we're going to use something called the Paragraph Designer to do so. Next, we're going to select the title that's already here, A Princess Dresser. And this might look good over here in the side head area, or maybe start off here and overlap into the column area. These are options that we can choose from using the Paragraph Designer. So let's do that. We'll go up to Format, down to Paragraphs, and you can see there are some options here. Body is checked off. It's body text, but we could go to a heading, for example, and say that headings, heading 1, even heading 2, belong in the side head area. But we can do all of that from the Paragraph Designer that appears at the top of this menu. Let's give it a click. Control-M is your keyboard shortcut. It's a good one to remember because you're going to be using the Paragraph Designer on a regular basis. Control-M will get you to it quickly. See how it opens up over here on the right-hand side. Now our content's still selected, so the style shows up as body. But let's say we want this to be our heading, level 1 heading. We'll click the drop-down, and there's that same list we saw from the Format Paragraphs menu. Let's go to heading 1 and select it. Now heading 1 comes with its own formatting. You can see, for example, things like spacing, indents. You can see the space below and above paragraphs, etc. And that's because we're looking at the basic formatting here. But if we want to change things like the font, we could go to Font. From here, let's keep the same font, Times New Roman, but let's bump it up. I think maybe 18 points would look better. We'll click the drop-down for size and select 18. You could type in here too if you wanted 16, for example. It doesn't appear on the list. Everything else, the color, the weight, it's bolded by default when we choose heading 1. We'll keep all of that and click Apply. You can see right away it looks different, much larger, and it's still bolded. All right, now we can go to pagination. From here, you can see that it's going to start anywhere. It's still body text, even though we've chosen heading 1. It's treated like body text. It belongs here in the column, but maybe we want it to appear over here. Check out the formats in the side head. Let's click side head. When we choose apply, you can see what that looks like. It's cramped over here on the left-hand side in our side head area. There's that gap we decided we would have as well. Maybe it'd look better going across all columns. Let's go to across all columns and apply. Well, that puts it back here in our first and only column and takes it out of the side head. But look at the last option, across all columns and side heads. Selecting that and clicking apply puts it over here in the side head, but allows it to overlap, go past that gap and into our column. That's a good option. But if we want to keep it in the side head, we should probably choose side head and then make some adjustments to the side head so it doesn't look so cramped. Let's click apply. And now if you remember, adjusting the side head meant going up to format, down to page layout, and then selecting column layout here at the top. Maybe we should just bump up the width of our side head from 1.25 to something like 2.25. Let's take out the 1, add a 2. Again, we can't undo this if we click update, but we can always come back here and make adjustments. Update entire flow. Click OK to confirm. And you can see that actually looks much better. Overlaps here, tries to overlap and wraps around to the second line. You can just click in the background here to deselect to see that that actually works quite well. But you do have all of these options from the paragraph designer, including to have it in the side head where we have it, or have it go across the columns and the side heads when you want your content to overlap past the side head area and into your column. All you need to do now is save your changes to keep what we've done. We'll move on to the next movie where we'll continue with paragraph formatting. In this movie, we're going to see the real advantage to working with styles that we were introduced to in the previous movie and the paragraph designer and how it can save us a lot of time when it comes to reformatting our document. We're going to work with this file very similar to what we've been working with called Catalog 27B. You'll find that in the 0205 subfolder of the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files. Just scroll down, you'll see it's a little bit longer. A new page has been added with a new heading, a sewing box, and some more body text. All right, up at the top of page 1, we'll just click anywhere inside the heading, A Princess Dresser. And we're going to use the paragraph designer we opened up in the previous movie. If you don't see it, remember the keyboard shortcut Control-M will always bring it up to the top. Let's say we wanted to change the size and alignment of our heading, but not just this one, all of the headings in our document. Well, let's go to the paragraph designer with the heading 1 style selected. Let's choose the font button to make this a little bit bigger. We'll bump it up by clicking the drop down to 24 points. There we go. Now nothing happens until we update this. There's a couple of different ways to do that. Clicking apply down below will apply it to this one heading. Go ahead and click apply. You can see it's much larger. As we scroll down to page 3 though, you'll notice the sewing box heading has not changed. And that's because we haven't updated the style, we've just updated the text with the apply button. When we click update style, we don't see a change here on page 1, but let's scroll down to page 3. This is much larger now. And that's because it's using the same heading 1 style and we just updated the style. So if we had a 100-page document with dozens of these headings, they'd all be updated at the same time. Let's make another adjustment. Let's click anywhere in Sewing Box and change the alignment to right. That means going to the Basic button up here in the Paragraph Designer and changing the alignment from left by clicking the drop-down and choosing right. Now we won't click Apply. We'll just update the style by clicking Update Style. You can see it is applied to this heading, and if we scroll all the way back up to the top of page 1, it's been applied to that heading as well. That's the big advantage to using styles, like the heading 1 style that's been applied, and the paragraph designer to quickly make adjustments throughout our entire document. Just as we can make a change to a style here in our FrameMaker document and have it applied to all content that has been tagged with that style, we can use the same procedure for making modifications to our body text. The body text or the paragraph text we see here on the right-hand side of our document is also tagged with a style called body. So any changes we make to content here can be applied throughout the entire document. And we're going to work with this longer version of the document we've been working with. You can see catalog 2017_C. You'll find that in the 0206 subfolder of the Chapter 2 folder of your exercise files. Open that up. You can see we have a new section up here. A piano bench is the heading. You can see the content down below takes us to Princess Dresser. And then further down, we see that sewing box. And you'll notice there is body text in each of these, let's call them chapters. And there are some lists as well that appear in here. We're going to focus on just the body text or paragraph text we see in this document. So let's click anywhere in this first paragraph up here next to a piano bench. When you click anywhere there, you can see the style being used is indeed body. And that's what we want to keep, but we want to make some changes, not just to this first paragraph, but to any content in this document tagged with the body style. All right, let's start with the font. We'll go to the font section here of our paragraph designer. And if you're not seeing it, remember, keyboard shortcut, Control-M. Let's change the size. You can see 12 points appears here. When we click the drop down, we could go to something like 11 points, for example. It's a smaller font. If we click apply, we get to see it just in this first paragraph. I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can see that paragraph as well as paragraphs down below. Clicking apply, we know is only going to apply it to the paragraph where our cursor's flashing. You can see that's smaller, looks a little neater, and perhaps it should be applied throughout the document. That means now going to update style, and we'll see it updated throughout the document. Those two down below have also been affected. Same thing with our lists. And we just made a change throughout our document thanks to the paragraph designer. We might want to make some other changes like the spacing. Since we're using a smaller font, we might want to increase the spacing. Let's go to the basic section of our paragraph designer now. And you can see the line space set to 13 points. When we click the drop down, we have some other options. For example, single is set to 13. That's what we see right now. There's 1.5 spacing, 19.5 points, and there's double, 26. Let's try 1.5, 1.5. And let's click apply to get to see what it looks like in this paragraph before we apply it to our entire document. So we'll click apply. And you can see that's actually a little bit too much spacing. Good thing we didn't apply it to the entire document. So let's go back and make a change here. Click the drop down. If you wanted it to be something smaller than 19.5, like 15 points, and it doesn't appear on the list, no problem. You just type it in. I'm going to take out what's there with my backspace and type in 15 points and click apply. You can see what that looks like. Much easier to read. I like that. And now I'm going to apply it to the style. So it's updating any body text in my document. Click update style and it's been applied throughout. We can scroll down throughout our entire document. Wherever we see body text, it has been updated. Very nice. One last thing we might want to do is add a first line indent for our paragraphs. So here where we see at the top of page 1 the piano bench shown, wouldn't it be nice if it were indented a little bit? Well, we can click anywhere again in this paragraph. And if you go to the ruler right above at the 3-inch mark where the paragraph starts, you'll see 2 arrows. The top one represents the first line indent. So if we go up there and just drag it over, maybe 1/4 inch, and release, you can see it affects that first and only paragraph at the top. Nothing else has been applied. All right, so we've made the adjustment. It looks good. And if we want it applied to the entire document, wherever body text appears, you know what to do. Come over to the paragraph designer here and click update style. Now, if you want to be very specific with this, we just drag the arrow. You'll notice there is a first line indent number that appears in this first field. Maybe it should be exactly 0.25. So we went a little far. You can take out the 8.1 and put in a 5. You may see a different number there, obviously. And now when we click apply, you can see it's moved over just ever so slightly. And that's what we want to use throughout. Wherever body text appears, we click update style. And you can see it affects every single paragraph in our document where body text is being used. So thanks to the paragraph designer and styles and content that's been tagged with those styles. It's easy to update body text throughout a document by using some simple maneuvers over here in the Paragraph Designer and updating the style throughout. Another type of style you can apply to your paragraphs come in handy when you're creating lists. You can have automatically numbered lists in order, or you can have bulleted lists created thanks to some of the styles available here in FrameMaker. We're going to focus in on numbered lists in this movie. On page 1 in the piano bench section, we do see a list of items here, and it might be nice to have them numbered. Now, instead of us going in here and adding the numbering, maybe changing up the tab stops and indents so it looks nice, we're going to let FrameMaker take care of it for us. So clicking anywhere in the first line for that first item, one top, 1 by 16.5 by, you can see it right there. Let's go over to the Style dropdown in our Paragraph Designer. If you're not seeing it, remember the keyboard shortcut Control-M to open it up. We'll click the drop-down and you will see a couple of numbered options to choose from, numbered and numbered 1. Numbered is automatically going to increment from the previous number. If there is no previous number, the first item becomes a 1, the next item a 2, a 3, etc. At any time, if you wish to start numbering over, you can choose the numbered 1 style, and automatically wherever you are in the list, it becomes number 1 and everything else will continue down below. So we're on the first item. Let's just go up to the drop-down and choose numbered and see what happens when we click apply. What's being applied are the default settings you see here. First of all, it's a 1 because there's nothing above it. It becomes number 1. Up here in the basic section of the Paragraph Designer, you can click there if you're not already seeing it. You can see there's a left indent of 1/4 inch. Check out the tab stop, another 1/4 inch. You can see the spacing. And of course, these can be adjusted. But before we do that, let's just go down to the remaining items. If you like what you see, select the remaining items by clicking and dragging. And again, we'll go up to the Style drop-down and choose Numbered and apply. There we go. Everything's numbered incrementally. You can see all the way down to 7. If we chose numbered 1, they'd all be 1s. And that's not what we wanted. So that means if I click after the first item and hit Enter, because I want to add a new item, it becomes number 2. Everything else gets renumbered 3 through 8. If I want to take something out by hitting backspace, everything's renumbered accordingly. And that's why we want to use a numbered list here in FrameMaker as opposed to adding them ourselves. And of course, we can make adjustments. Now, as we look at the ruler, you can see where the tab stop is and the indent. If we wanted to change any of this up, we can change it for our current list or anything that's selected, or for all lists that use this style called numbered. Let's say, for example, we want the tab stop here to move over a little bit further. Now, when I select it here on the ruler, you can see it appears here under tab stops at 2.48. We can click in there and click Edit to change it. Let's say it should be 0.3. Type in 0.3, click Continue, click OK. Notice we won't be able to revert. You can see now it's a 0.3. It's a little further indented than the rest. So if I wanted to, I could update the style with that setting. Let's see what happens when we click Update Style. All the rest fall into line. Easy as that. So there are a number of different ways we can make modifications to the spacing, the indenting. We could change what the numbers look like, and if there are dots in between. You can see in this case we have a number and then a period before the tab. Any of that can be changed as well. Let's just go up here next to the Paragraph Designer. Look for the tab labeled Paragraph Catalog. Select it. You can see the list of items being used in this document, including this one now, which is checked off numbered. And you can see when we click down below to any one of these other ones, we change it. We want it back to numbered, but that's another way to choose a different style. Now, any of these can be edited, and we can create our own as well from the Paragraph Designer here. You can see with numbering selected what the format is exactly. We're seeing codes here, N plus, which means a number, and then it's going to be incremented by 1. Then we see the period, so that's a period that appears after the number, and then we see a /T representing the tab stop. So if we wanted to, we could take out the period. Let's go in here if you don't want periods. backspace to take it out. Click Apply, and you'll see it applied to just the first item. If you like that, update the style. By clicking Update Style, all of the periods are removed. Want it back? Just click in there after the bracket, add the period, and update style, just like that. So just like any of the other style tags that we have access to here in FrameMaker, numbered lists can save us a lot of time in numbering our items and renumbering when we add or remove items. And it's always good to know we can customize the style tag to do exactly what we need it to here in FrameMaker. When creating a list here in FrameMaker, and that list of items does not need to be in any specific order, you might consider using bullets or creating a bulleted list as opposed to a numbered list. Of course, there is a format that can be chosen here in FrameMaker. You can customize it just like we did with our numbered list in the previous movie. You can even create your own style tags. Something else we're going to explore in this movie as we continue working with our catalog 2017_C file if you've been following along. If you're skipping to this movie, just go to the 0208 subfolder of the Chapter 2 folder and you'll find it. You'll be all caught up with me. We're scrolling down to the second page, a princess dresser, and you can see we do have a couple of lists here. And let's say they don't need to be in any specific order, so we might want to add bullets. First, we'll try using the preset bullet style available to us here in FrameMaker. Let's just click anywhere in the first line, and instead we'll go over to the paragraph catalog, where you can see a list of different tags that are already being used in this document. The one that's currently applied to our first line of text here is bolded, it's body. If we want it bulleted, we can select it right from the list, bulleted. Now you can see there's a check mark next to bulleted. It's the one that's applied, and you can see the default formatting. You can see there's a hanging indent, a tab stop, and you can see a black dot used for a bullet. If you like that, select the remainder of those items on the list and select bulleted. There's no apply button when we use the paragraph catalog. It's simply applied by default. Click in the background to see what that looks like. Maybe you like that for this list, but you want to use different bullets for other types of lists. So we scroll down a little bit further and we see this list of items, drawer slides, drawer bottoms, etc. And we want to use a different set of bullets. So we go to the paragraph designer here. If we click in the first line, you can see currently the style being applied is the body tag. So it's tagged as body text and it's getting that style applied. If we want to create a brand new style, all we have to do is click in the style field up here. With body selected, we can type right over that, naming our own style. So something that's not already on the list. We wouldn't want to use, for example, bulleted because it's already there. Instead, we'll type something like my bullets. There we go. And then down below, we'll create the style. With the style created, now we can start making adjustments. We could adjust the current bulleted list up above, or we can customize our own bulleted list here. For example, we can adjust what we see up top for the hanging indent and the tab stop. And move the bottom arrow to 3 1/4 inches. Now, if I'm not sure if I'm exactly on, I can look over here and you can see the indent, first line indent's not at 0, which it should be. So I'm going to highlight that and just type in a 0 and hit the tab key. The left, I want it to be 0.3 from that 0, hit tab. And you can see it's moved into position exactly where I want it. Look what it looks like here on this first line. Well, I haven't actually put in the tab stop yet. It goes right below. So we'll click right below on the lower half of the ruler, that hanging indent. And you can see now it should be at 0.3 as well, which it is down here. You can see under tab stops on the right-hand side. Now all we need to do is create that bullet style, and it's under the numbering category. So we go to numbering and turn on auto number paragraphs, even though we're not going to be using numbers. And instead of using the bullet that we see at the top of the building blocks, that's what we see over here on the left-hand side, let's use our own character. We'll click inside the format field and add an asterisk. And then we want a tab after that asterisk so it moves over to the tab stop we've put on the ruler. That's the next building block. the \T that we see here, select it. And now when we apply that to our first line, you can see what it looks like. Very nice. In fact, it's exactly what we want, so we can update our style called My Bullets. When we update the style, we can now go in here, select the remainder of those items, and from our style dropdown now, we're going to be able to choose My Bullets, listed alphabetically here, and apply. There we go. Click in the background to see what that looks like. So a bulleted list is very useful when you have a list of items that don't need to be in any particular order. Of course, you can make modifications to existing styles like we did in the previous movie. We could do that with these bullets if we wanted to, or even create your own style, making adjustments along the way until you get exactly what you want. Now we have a couple of different bulleted options for our documents here in FrameMaker. In an earlier movie, we learned how automatic numbering could be applied to a list to save us time and effort when it comes to adding and removing items and not having to worry about editing the numbers. It's taken care of automatically. Well, the same procedure can be applied to other elements in your document. For example, our headings, perhaps they should be numbered with the word chapter, volume, or module, for example. That can be done. That's what we're going to do in this movie. We'll just click in front of a piano bench if your cursor's not already flashing there. Here's where we want to add the word module, an automatic number, maybe a colon and a space, for example. Well, to do that, we're not going to modify the heading 1 style that we can see in our paragraph designer is already applied. We may want to use this style in other places in our document without the automatic numbering. So we'll leave it as is and create a new one. Remember, if you can't find your paragraph designer, Control M is your keyboard shortcut. And in fact, I'm going to click and drag this down to the bottom of the other panel that's showing up behind. When I see that blue line going across, I'm going to release. That way I can see a couple of things at once, including the paragraph catalog where I see heading 1 is selected. Instead, we're going to create a new one, so we'll click in the style field here, and how about we name it modules? Just type that in, modules, and then down below, create style. Right now, it looks the same as heading 1. You can see it's bolded here. And it looks the same as heading 1 because that's what was formatted before we created this new style. We're going to make some changes, not to the formatting, but to the numbering. So we'll go to the numbering button here in our paragraph designer, and we'll turn on auto number paragraphs. There we go. Now all we need to do is go in the format field and add the automatic numbering and any text we want as well, like the word module. Could be chapter, volume, for example, but I'm going to use module, leave a space, and next is where I want to see the automatic numbering appear. Remember when we created our numbered list and we wanted it to increment by 1, we used the building block N+. So we'll select it here. Next, we'll have a colon and a space, and if we click apply, we'll see what a piano bench looks like. There it is, module 1. A piano bench. All right, what happened though down below? Check out the numbered list, which is now 2, 3, 4 through 8. And if we went down to our next chapter heading here, or module heading, a princess dresser, and applied this new module style, we would actually see a 9. That's because the numbering is automated throughout. And if you want to have separate numbering for your modules from your list, you need to create a different series, and it's easy to do. All you need is to choose a letter and a colon to name this series. How about if we go in the format field here, click in front of module, and name this series M as in module, M colon. As soon as we add that, FrameMaker knows this is a separate series of numbers from our list. All we have to do now is update the style. Check it out. Module 1, a piano bench, just as it was before, but down below, looks like our list is starting at 1, ending at 7. That means we should be able to go down to the next page, click anywhere in a princess dresser, and go to our paragraph catalog now and select modules. When we do, it becomes module 2. And if we scroll down even further, a couple of pages down to the next module, a sewing box, click anywhere there, and apply our new style called modules. It is numbered module 3, a sewing box, just like that. So when you want to apply automatic numbering to other elements in your FrameMaker document, like chapters, volumes, or in our case, modules, remember you can create as many styles as you like. Just remember to keep separate series of numbering by applying a letter and a colon. We might want to go back to our list and modify that style to include the L colon as in lists, so we can have multiple styles of numbered lists throughout our document. That might be something for you to do as homework before moving on to the next movie. So far in this chapter, we've been creating some of our own style tags, and if we look at the paragraph catalog, you can see a number of tags or styles that are being used in the document. You can also see a number that may or may not be used in your document. The ones that are not checked off, you're simply not using, and they're taking up space in your catalog. So one thing you may want to do to stay organized is either hide the ones you're not using or even remove them altogether. Remember, the styles you see here in the paragraph catalog are stored with your document. So if you remove them, they'll only be removed from the document you're working on. So let's take a look at how we do that. Notice, for example, here in the list, the numbered list, if you click anywhere in there, you can see as you scroll down the paragraph catalog, it's bolded. It's called numbered. And I did my homework. I added the L colon in front of the format to keep this series separate from other series like our module. Now there are a number that are not checked off that we may want to hide. How do we do that? Well, all you need to do is go up here to the paragraph catalog and click the options button. You'll see that we can create a customized list. Selecting it and then clicking edit allows you to do exactly what I'm talking about. Show everything that you're using and maybe hide the ones you're not. So by having this separate window open, we can scroll up and down our paragraph catalog to see that we're not using heading 2, heading run. So we can choose those and move them over to the right to the Don't Show field. With each click, indented, we're not using it. Numbered 1, we're not using it either. But we are using modules, and we are using our numbered list called numbered, so we'll keep those. Table title, we're not using that one. And as you can see, we're increasing the list of things not to show. And when we click Set and click OK, you can see our list is updated. It's much easier to manage now as we scroll up and down. In fact, there's still 1 or 2 there that we're not using, but we may want to use, so we'll keep them there if we plan on using them. The other option is to delete the ones you're not using. If you're done with your document, and there are a number of styles sitting here that are stored with your document that simply aren't being used, they're taking up space. So go up to the delete button at the top. This does open up a separate dialog where we can go in here now and start deleting the ones we're not using. So if we're not using indented, for example, we know that's on the hidden list. We can click delete. Same thing for table title. Delete that. We're not using the heading run in. And so on. Heading 2. We can delete as many as we like. They're no longer stored with the document, and don't worry about losing them. When you go to create a new FrameMaker document, the full list will be there. We're only affecting the file we're working on. When we click OK and click OK again, we can't undo this. We've now just updated our document with a much easier to manage list of paragraph styles. So remember your 2 options. If you're finding as you're creating your own styles, it's getting a little bit overcrowded here in the paragraph catalog, you can either hide the ones you're not using and keep them with the document in case you do want to use them, or delete them altogether from the document, and that'll make it a much easier list to manage moving forward. In this chapter, we're going to begin to explore some of the features that set FrameMaker apart from your average word processor like Microsoft Word. I'm talking about page layout. Here we have, so far, a single column of text, even though it looks like we have 2. The column appears over here on the right-hand side of the page. On the left, we have our side head that we set up earlier containing our headings. So let's start by looking at how we can make adjustments to the number of columns we're working with. We can make the adjustments to the document itself while we're working on it, And the other option is to go to the master pages, which are updated when we make changes here in our document. So let's start by changing this to a 2-column document with a side head. To do that, we'll go up to the Format menu, down to Page Layout, and from here, you can see we can select Column Layout. Give it a click. Now we've been here before, and this is where we decided to use a side head, setting up room on the side for our headings, basically. We have the width at 2.25 inches, the gap at 0.2 between our side head and our columns of text, which are currently set up as one single column. The gap you see down below, 0.25 inches, is the default space between multiple columns if we change this from one to anything else. And we can also choose to have multiple columns automatically balanced so they're equal in width. Let's try it out. Where we see the number set to 1, if it's already highlighted, you can type right over it, 2. If not, just select what's there and type 2. And they don't need to be balanced. We don't need to check this box off unless we want to be sure that they're going to be equal after they've been changed. By default, we're going to get 2 equal columns. So we'll leave it unchecked for now. Notice down below the margins can be set up from here as well. We'll get back to those in a moment, but for now, let's update the entire flow of our document. Notice there's no undo for this. We'd have to come back here to make the change. When we click Update, you can see the warning again that's going to appear indicating we can't undo this. Are you sure you want to continue? Click OK. If you're tired of seeing this warning, remember you can click the checkbox to never show it again. Click OK. And as you can see, we do have 2 equal columns showing up with the 0.25 inches in between. So as we scroll through our pages, you can see as it gets to the bottom of column 1, content wraps around to the top of the next column. And then on we go to module 2 where it starts over, 2 columns. And you may be thinking this doesn't look all that attractive, and you're right. Probably wouldn't apply well to this style of document. So to make the changes back to a single column, this time let's change our view by clicking View and going from body pages that we see checked off down below to master pages. From here you can see the side head area, you can see the 2 columns, the gap in between. There's even space up here at the top of our page for a header, and as we scroll down to the bottom, room for a footer as well. And you can see the master pages is actually set up as 2 separate pages. And that's because we chose to have facing pages. That means when you open up your document, down the middle, you'll see facing pages indicating that you can have different margins on the inside, which would be down the crease, or on the outside of your pages. And that's the beauty of using something like facing pages. Let's make those changes now back to a single column from here. So we'll go up to Format, down to Page Layout, and then Column Layout, just like we did while working in our document. We'll change the number from 2 back to 1, type right over it. Everything else we can leave the same, but maybe the margins could be adjusted. Notice the top and bottom are both set to 0.75, inside and outside to 0.5. Well, maybe we'd rather have the outside margins a little bit bigger. So from here, we could go to the outside field and make it, how about 0.6. A little more space on the outside pages, giving you some room if you want to jot things down after printing it out, for example. All we have to do now is click Update Entire Flow and click OK to bypass the warning. And you can see the layout now, what it looks like here in our master pages. This would be the left page. Clicking the arrow takes us to the right page. And if we want to see what that looks like for our document, we go back to View, and where Master Pages is checked off, we want to select Body Pages. Body Pages now updated with our change back to a single column with a side head. You can see a little more space on the right-hand side than the left until we get down to the next page where it flips over. So inside and outside pages with different margins will make up for the fact that we may have to bind down the middle, for example, or want to create space on the outside for jotting down notes once this is printed. So the real power of FrameMaker over your average word processor is where it comes to page layout options. And we're going to continue exploring more as we move through the various movies in this chapter. We can use master pages in a FrameMaker document to adjust a lot more than just the number of columns and margins. We can make adjustments to how text is going to flow, what appears at the top and bottom of every page, for example. So let's explore master pages in a little greater detail as we continue working with our catalog file. Let's start by changing the view by clicking the View menu and selecting Master Pages. You'll currently see a check mark next to Body Pages. That allows us to see the content in our file. By switching to Master Pages, we just see outlines representing the different parts of our layout without the content. So you'll notice down below, you're probably looking at the right-hand side or Master Page 2 of 2. There are arrows to navigate to the different pages. You can see Master Page 1 of 2 represents the left-hand side or the odd pages. So if we move up to the top area where we see an outline and just click in there and then check out the status bar, you can see that that is our header. Now if we click in the left-hand side down below, you can see we can't even get in the side head. It's reserved. The cursor flashes in column 1 or, as you look down below, representing the body. You'll also notice the flow. It's flow A. We can have different flows for different parts of our document. Let's scroll down near the bottom of the page and click in that area. You can see that is our footer area. And then on the next master page, which is page 2 of 2, we have the same types of things. You can see the same flow, and all that means is when we run out of space adding content, it automatically flows to the next page that's created in the same area. So a new page is created when we run out of space. But those are things we can adjust. And let's start by going to our first master page and scroll far enough down that you can see the footer area and click inside. So keeping in mind that this would be the left-hand side of our page, we might want to have the word Catalog 2017 appear down there. And let's see what that looks like by going back to the View menu and then selecting Body Pages. We don't save or update, we just switch views. And as we scroll down to the bottom of page 1, you can see there's nothing there. But when we get down to page 2, which would represent the left side of the page, we do see Catalog 2017. So we're only seeing it on every second page because we're using facing pages, which gives us 2 masters as opposed to 1. That means we need to go back to View, select Master Pages, and if we want it appearing at the bottom of every page, we need to go down to our second master page here, click at the bottom and type the exact same thing in, Catalog 2017. All right, let's go back to View, Body Pages, and sure enough, as we scroll down, we're going to see Catalog 2017 in the bottom left corner of every page. The only thing we might want to adjust is alignment. Perhaps on the odd pages, Catalog 2017 should appear over here on the right-hand side. So when we have facing pages, it's always on the outside and easy to find. It's not down in the middle near the crease. Well, that means making adjustments to our headers and footers, which are also part of master pages. We'll cover that next. In this movie, we're going to continue working with our headers and footers, areas where we can insert repetitive content, information that's going to appear at the top or bottom of every page in our document. We need to remember, as we continue working with our Catalog 2017 file, that this is a document with facing pages. That means we're going to have different settings, different headers, different footers on our even pages from our odd pages. So let's start by making some adjustments so it's very obvious which one's an inside page, which one's an outside page. We're going to go up to the Format menu, down to Page Layout. We've been here before, then Column Layout. And we're going to go into the margins area. We'll leave the top and bottom as is at 0.75. Let's consider the inside margin. That's where, if we're going to bind this like a book, we might need some extra space. So let's change that from 0.5 to 0.75. That means on the outside, we need less space. Let's change it to 0.5. So we'll take out the 0.6, replace it with a 5, and update entire flow. And you can see that creates a more obvious look at what will happen on the inside versus the outside of the page. As we scroll down to our second page, we see the exact opposite. Page 2 would typically be on the left-hand side, and we see extra space here where the binding would appear and less room on the outside where it's no longer needed. But as we scroll through this, from the previous movie, we see Catalog 2017 showing up in the same location, in the bottom left-hand corner of odd and even pages. It might make sense if we were going to have two different headers and footers, maybe the same content could appear in different places. For example, here on page 2, we see it over here on the left-hand side next to the binding when it should be over here on the right-hand side. Let's keep that in mind now as we make some adjustments to our headers and footers. We do that by going back up to the View menu, and from here we'll go to our Master Pages. This gives us a look at our facing pages. You can see page 2 here would represent the page that would be on the right-hand side, and as we scroll up, page 1 of our masters, remember, not our document, would represent the page that would appear on the left. So as we scroll down to the bottom of our first master page, it would make sense that Catalog 2017 show up over here on the left-hand side, but as we scroll down to the next page, this should be appearing over here on the right-hand side. So we'll just click in here in the footer area where Catalog 2017 appears, and we're going to go to our Paragraph Designer. Remember, Control M if you're not seeing it, and click Basic. From here, we can change the alignment. You can see it's set to Justified, which is left aligned. Click the drop down and choose Right. All we have to do now is apply that, and you can see it now appears over here on the right-hand side. Okay, so we have those in the exact location where we want them. We can also add other information like page numbering, for example. Let's go to the header, and remembering again that we have two different headers, one for our odd pages, one for our even pages. Let's start by centering this. Let's say we want the page numbering and the total page count appearing at the top center of every page. Well, we'll change our alignment to center. And, of course, click Apply so we see our flashing cursor in the middle. Next, we're going to type in the word page, leave a space, and instead of typing in a number, we want to insert what's called a variable. A variable can be accessed a couple of different ways. Let's go up to Insert, and from here, go down to Headers and Footers, and from here you'll see Insert Page Number, and you see the number symbol as opposed to the actual number. There we go. Let's leave a space, type in the word of, leave a space, and now we can get the total page count inserted as well from the Insert menu. Headers and Footers, and Insert Page Count. You can see it's already totaling up the pages. In this case, it would be page 1, 2, 3, or 4 of 4. Now, if we go down to our second master page, none of that appears, and we want it there. So the easiest thing to do is to select all of this, click and drag. I'm going to right-click and choose Copy. You can use Control-C if you like that from the keyboard. Scroll down to the top of our second master page, click inside the header. Again, this needs to be centered, so we'll change the alignment from our Paragraph Designer to Center and Apply. And now we can paste right where the cursor's flashing. Choose Paste, and we have it there as well. All we have to do now is change our view back from the View menu to our body pages to see what that looks like. So here at the top of page 1, we do see page 1 of 4. We scroll down knowing that this would be on the right-hand side of our booklet, and sure enough, Catalog 2017 shows up in the bottom right. There it is, page 2 of 4 at the top of the second page, and look at our footer, Catalog 2017, on the left-hand side, just like that. So with headers and footers, we can place content that's going to be repeated across every page in a document. If we're using facing pages like we are, we can have different headers and footers, different content, or the same content showing up in different places if we want. Well, so far in this chapter, if you've been following along with me, we've been using the default master pages that come with our document. When we choose facing pages like we did for our catalog, we get 2 master pages. That way we can have content at the top and bottom of every page using the header and footer area that looks different for our even pages from our odd pages, for example. But what if you want a totally different page? Let's say we want to add a cover page to this, and we didn't want the side head area. We don't want a header or a footer. In that case, you can create a custom master page That's what we're going to do in this movie. You can create up to 100 for every document you're working on. There are a couple of different ways to add new master pages to the existing defaults. One option, right from your document, if you click anywhere in your document and you want your new master page to look similar to what you're working on, you can get a head start by going up to Format, down to Page Layout, and select New Master Page. It's going to be based on the current master that's being used here in the background. All we have to do is give it a name, like Cover, for example. But I don't even want any of this layout, so let's click Cancel. And instead, we'll change our view to our master pages. View, then Master Pages down near the bottom. We see our current two for our left and our right masters. Well, we need a third one here for our cover page. So, again, we'll go up to Format, just like we did before, to Page Layout and New Master Page. But this time, because we're in our master page view, the options are a little bit different. We'll give it a name. Let's call it Cover for cover pages. We can copy it from one of the existing left or right master pages, or there it is, we can start with a blank slate by choosing Empty. That means we'll have to add the elements we want, like a text frame for our text, but we'll leave out the headers and footers and the side head, for example. So let's click Add. There's the warning. We can't undo it. Click OK. And now we have a blank page ready to start adding the content we want, like a text frame. Text frame, I know we can get from the graphics tools. That could mean changing our workspace from authoring to manage graphics. Or if you want to stay in the authoring view and just open up the toolbox, let's just go up to Graphics and select Tools. There's the toolbox that we can drag over here to the left just to anchor it over there. And that's where we find the option to add a text frame. You can see Place a Text Frame right here. Give it a click. Go onto the page. Let's not worry about the positioning or the size. We'll just click and drag across and down to add a new text frame. So there it is. It can be background text, such as we would use for headers and footers. That's not what we want here. It's going to be used for body text. So we want template for body page text frame. And you can see the flow tag defaults to A. That's the flow that we see in our document going from one page to the next. If we want to keep this totally separate, we can add a new tag here. Let's type in B. It's going to be one column. The gap is irrelevant with a single column. All we have to do now is click Add to add it to our blank master page. Obviously, that's not the finished product. Now we can go inside the text frame, right-click, and select Object Properties to modify this a little bit further. There's all of our current options, but we're going to go up to Dimensions, for example. Let's say we want it starting an inch from the top. Well, in the top field, just type in 1 over whatever's selected. And we want it starting an inch in from the left. Select whatever's there and type right over it, a 1. And we'll make the size fit perfectly with 1-inch margins all the way around. That means on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, we need 2 inches on the left and right for the width, leaving 6.5 inches. And for the height, we need an inch at the top and the bottom. So that's going to leave us with a 9-inch text frame. There we go. When we click Apply, it's applied to our master and we're done. We can add other elements, change margins, etc. But right now we have exactly what we want for our cover page. So let's change our view now back by clicking View to Body Pages. Obviously, it doesn't affect anything that we see here so far, but if we want to add a new page here at the top that's disconnected from the rest, in other words, we don't want it flowing from the cover page into this, all we do is go up to the Insert menu now, and we're going to insert what's called a disconnected page. We want to add it before the page we're on. Make sure Before page is selected, just one, that's all we're adding. And look at this, we get to use the master page of our choosing, including our new cover master, which is our custom. Click Add, and there's the warning. We can't undo it. Click OK. And another warning that doesn't recommend using connected pages. Normally, we want text to flow from one page to the next, but that's not the case for our cover page. We're OK to click OK. So there's our new page. Scroll down to the next page. You can see nothing's affected, but we do have this new cover page ready to start adding our content. Just click in here and start adding the title of our module, of our book, whatever it is we're creating. We have our new custom master. And remember, you can create up to 100 custom masters per document. Well, up until now, if you've been following along, we've been making some changes to our page layout, our page design, our masters. We haven't paid much attention to the content itself. We have our cover page we created, but down below we can see all of the text. It's plain old black on a white background. We can add some visual interest by using color, and in this movie, we're going to add color to some text on a page. So let's get some text on our cover page. We'll hit enter a few times just to leave some blank lines. Turn on your caps lock key and type in furniture catalog. Hit enter and add 2017 on the next line. There we go. Now before we add some color, let's make this bigger. We can click and drag across the content. And one option is to go up to the formatting toolbar up here and click the drop down for size. Let's go to the biggest preset, which is 24. Instantly, we can see that change. Maybe a little bigger would be better. Let's go to the paragraph designer now. Control M is a keyboard shortcut if you're not seeing it. And make sure the font button is selected. From here, you'll see the size we just selected, 24, but click the drop down. There's one even bigger, 36. This time we need to click apply to see the change, and maybe that's a little too big. So we'll go back to the size field and this time click inside as opposed to the arrow and type in a value like 32. Now when we click apply, we see that's probably the right size. It's still selected, so now we can work on the color as well. Go to the color dropdown, and from here you'll see some presets. If we're looking for a mix of blue and green, we can go down the list. There's green, there's blue, there's some shades of green, like pale green and forest green, or royal blue. I'm not seeing exactly what I want. Let's start with forest green. Give it a click and click apply. And now click in the background to deselect your selected text to see what that looks like. Already more interesting than it was when we started, but not exactly the right color. But that's okay because we can define our own colors to appear on the color dropdown. To do that, we go up to View, down to Color, and over to Definitions. From here in the Color Definitions window, we can do things like go to the Model dropdown and change it from CMYK to RGB or HLS. Let's try RGB. That gives us red, green, and blue values. So we can make adjustments if we wanted to, and we will see the new color versus the old color when we start making adjustments. But what we really want to do is choose from a color library. Let's go to the library dropdown and switch it over to, how about Pantone Uncoded? Maybe you have a little pamphlet that has all of the different Pantone colors in there to choose from, and they're numbered. So you type in one of those numbers of a color you like in that booklet, 292. There it is right there. You can select it if you need to and click Done, and it becomes the new color. You can see the CMYK models being used, and the sliders have their own values here. Yellow and black set to 0, magenta 27%, 72% cyan gives us this new color. So if that's a color we want, we can click Create. It'll be created with the same name that we saw from the list. Now if you want to change the name, you can do that too. Just don't start with a color. We'll click and drag across that. If you were to type in blue or green, it would change up the colors already showing up there. We want to start with something like titles because we're going to be using this for the titles in our document. So I'm going to type in titles and I'm going to add blue green. That reminds me it's a blue-green mixture and it will be used mainly for titles in my documents. So with that selected, I click Create. I can't undo it. Clicking OK. Adds it to my library, which means I'm done. And now when I select my title, Furniture Catalog 2017, and go to the Paragraph Designer and click the color drop-down, where it was forest green, I'm going to find a new one called Titles, blue-green, right here at the bottom. Click, apply, click in the background to see the end result. Very nice. So when you need to add color to content, you can override the style that's being used using the Paragraph Designer, but we can also work with character and paragraph formatting as well. We'll get into that as we move through the movies in this chapter. Well, now that we've created a custom color definition in the previous movie, we can use that custom color elsewhere in our FrameMaker documents. For example, we created tags or styles for paragraphs. We created a style for our headings. We can apply the color to that style and see it updated throughout our document. Let's do that with our Catalog 2017 file. We've already applied our custom color to our title on our cover page. Let's scroll down now to the next page where we see Module 1, a piano bench. First thing I'm going to do is click in front of the A and hold down the Shift key and press Enter. That way I can create a piano bench on its own two lines and leave Module 1 up there by itself without separating the content. Now, with my cursor flashing anywhere in this heading, I can apply the color and have it updated wherever this style is being used. So we go to the Paragraph Designer, and if you don't see it, Control-M is your keyboard shortcut. Let's go down to Color here. Notice that the style we're using is called Modules. So when we go down to the color and change it to our new custom style at the bottom, Tiles, Blue, Green, instead of clicking Apply, which will apply it to the entire paragraph because it is a paragraph style, we don't need to select the content, it's simply going to be applied to this current paragraph or heading. If we scroll down to the next page, you'll notice it hasn't updated the rest until we go down here and choose Update Style. When we update the style, we're updating the style called Module, so wherever it's used in our document, we're going to see that new custom color applied. So I'm just going to go in here and add that Shift and Enter for a princess dresser, move it down to its own two lines, and the same thing for our sewing box. Click in front of the A. Hold down Shift when you press Enter. That way the contents stay together with the module and the number. So because we've created our custom color definition, it's easy to apply to existing styles and update our entire document. We could also apply it to individual characters and text. We'll do that next. Up until this point, much of the formatting we've been doing in our FrameMaker document has been applied to paragraphs using the Paragraph Designer. We can click anywhere in a paragraph, like our module heading, and apply changes like the custom color we created, for example. Same thing happened at the top of page 1 when we created our title on the cover page. What if we want to make changes using similar formatting to individual words or characters? Well, in that case, we need to use the Character Designer. Paragraph Designer won't work. Let's test it out with our file. Let's say the piano bench words here in the first paragraph next to our Module 1 here. We want to select those two words and use our custom color, maybe bold this as well. You might be inclined to go to the Paragraph Designer. We've been using it so often, and change the color to that custom color we created a couple of movies ago, Titles Blue Green. And maybe you want to change the weight to bold. So you select that and click Apply, and you would think it's going to be applied to those two words, but it's applied to the entire paragraph because we're using the Paragraph Designer. So we need to undo that. Control-Z or click the Undo button up here on the toolbar. We'll keep those two words highlighted or selected and instead use the Character Designer to make adjustments. How do we get that? A couple of different ways. You can use a keyboard shortcut, Control-D, or go up to Format, down to Characters, and choose Character Designer. Opens up next to our Paragraph Designer, should be selected here. And now you can see similar options, but they'll be applied to the characters that are selected. So let's try it out. Let's change the color to that custom color, Titles Blue Green. Let's go to the weight drop down and bold it. And now when we click Apply, it's applied to just those two words. You can click in the background to see what that looks like. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to use this going forward for other characters we select or words or sentences? Let's click anywhere in the piano bench text that has been reformatted and create a new style from this. But it's going to be a character style, not a paragraph style, because we're going to do it here in the Character Designer. Click in the Style field. Let's say this is highlighted with bold and blue, so we might want to use something like high, blue, bold, like so. And now down below, using all the settings that already appear here, bold, there's our custom color, we can create the style. And with the style created, now we can select it from the Style dropdown and apply it to other content. Let's scroll down to the next page and select Princess Dresser here in the first paragraph. And we're going to apply that style now. Let's go up here to the character catalog, and there's our new one, High Blue Bold. Select it, and it's applied. Click in the background to see what that looks like. We have another module down below here. Our sewing box will do the same with those two words, sewing box, and select High Blue Bold, just like that. So we'll save a lot of time by creating this character style once we have the formatting we want using the character designer. Now we can also apply formatting to automatic numbering like we see with our lists, for example, and our bullets. That's something we'll talk about next. Because we created a custom character style in the previous movie, High Blue Bold, it now appears in our character catalog, and we can use it to apply the formatting to selected text or content. But what if we have a numbered list? We're not able to go in here and select the numbers. It's impossible. That's because automatic numbering is being used. But we can format using our new custom character style, using the paragraph designer, and going to numbering from there. Let's try it out. We'll click Paragraph Designer to open it up. Control-M is a keyboard shortcut. Just click anywhere in the first item. And as you can see, if we look over here at the Paragraph Designer and click Numbering, the format is number plus. So that's simply a number that's going to be incremented by 1 as we move through the list. There's a period and a tab that was used there as well. And down below, you can see the character format being applied as the default font. But if we click the drop-down, we're now going to see our High Blue Bold option. Our custom character style appears here on this list. And all we have to do now, if we click Apply, we'll see it applied to that first item. But if we want to update the style, click Update Style, and all of the numbers in our list are updated with that new formatting. So because you create a custom character style, it can be applied to any selected text, yes, but you can also go to the Paragraph Designer under Numbering and have that option applied to the numbering you see in your list. It will also be applied to bullets if you wanted to do that. Let's scroll down a little bit further and click anywhere in the bulleted list. Now when we click there, you can see the format being used is just the bullet and a tab. But if we go down to our character format and go to High Blue Bold, it now appears on this list, and update the style, all of our bullets get that as well. So that's the beauty of creating a custom character style, having it accessible from the character catalog, but also from the paragraph designer when it comes to automatic numbering and bullets means we'll have access to it from virtually anywhere.